In the wake of Donald Trump's attempted takeover of Washington, D.C., Republican governors have made it clear they're not only happy to support it, they can also lend a hand. 3 Republican-led governors, Patrick Morrisey of West Virginia, Henry McMaster of South Carolina, and Mike DeWine of Ohio, have all announced they're going to deploy their state's National Guard troops to D.C. in the coming days, with up to 750 troops expected. This comes amid new reporting from NBC News that some National Guard troops deployed to D.C. will begin carrying firearms to conduct their missions in the city, according to 2 U.S. officials. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser shot back at Trump's crackdown on X, writing, "American soldiers and airmen policing American citizens on American soil is un-American." Joining us now is Christina Greer, Associate Professor of Political Science at Fordham University. So let's start out with, we have some harrowing footage. It is from the Washington Post that was released just an hour ago, and we want to warn viewers that this footage is disturbing. The footage shows unidentified federal agents who are violently detaining a food delivery driver as he emerged from a D.C. coffee shop yesterday morning. This incident was captured on video, and it shows the officers throwing him to the ground and beating him before sweeping him away in an unmarked vehicle. DHS has since identified him as a Venezuelan national who they say entered the country illegally in 2023 and was ordered removed by an immigration judge last year. So, Christina, what's your reaction to that footage?
Well, I mean, this is what Donald Trump promised the American people when he was campaigning for several months. He said that he would make sure he cleaned the streets and cleaned this country of these types of people. And there are however many millions of Americans that heard that message consistently month after month and still voted for it. And so we're obviously in an escalation phase. I think a lot of people are now getting very concerned about the abdication of Congress to the president. I think they're getting extremely concerned about the courts essentially saying, you do whatever you'd like, Donald Trump. We will just sit by and allow you to do it. And so these one-time rulings. And I think that we need to have some hard conversations about local politics and ground-up support of making sure that, you know, some of the people who were your low-level city council members and state representatives who then become members of Congress or ultimately senators and governors, actually we need to start paying attention, make sure we get some of those people out of the pipeline and support other people within the pipeline so that when they're in the capacity to make these decisions, they make the right ones.
Christina, you mentioned something about the fact that the Trump campaign at the time made very clear what their intentions were, and, you know, people still supported that. In your estimation, as a political scientist, do you think that the response that we are seeing is more, I didn't believe that this was actually going to happen, or I didn't think it was going to happen the way it's happening? Meaning I didn't know that it was going to be as violent. I didn't know that it was going to be as in my face. I didn't know that it was going to involve National Guardsmen doing the job of local police departments.
Right. And for some people, the third part is I didn't think it would involve me, right, or affect me in any way. I think it's all of the above. Because this isn't the first term of Donald Trump. And so we saw the first term, he didn't know much about Washington, D.C. He didn't have many allies. He didn't know, how to turn on the lights realistically. And so what so many Democrats, and black women in particular specifically, said for the second time around, it's that he was casing the joint the first time. He knows where everything is this time, and he is making promises that he can actually fulfill this time because he actually does understand now a little bit more about executive orders. He actually does understand a little bit more about Congress and the courts. And there are a few times that there were some Republicans who said, sir, that's a bridge too far. I'm actually not going to do that because it's illegal. And so he's now realized he doesn't even have any of those people in his orbit. He has sycophants who are saying, listen, if you want it, if you like it, I love it, right? And so it doesn't matter if it's legal. And so the law is just a mere suggestion. And so this is what he did promise, and he's figuring out ways to actually enact on it.
What do you make of the way that Muriel Bowser has, the mayor in D.C., has navigated all of this? At times, she's pushed back. You just saw that tweet a moment ago, calling all this un-American. But in other ways, she's also said that she's willing to collaborate with federal partners. She's been very careful in how she chooses her words at press conferences. Right. And then, of course, people were angry with her for going to Martha's Vineyard for a moment to pick up her daughter. How do you see her role in all this? As so many people, as you just spelled out, they're looking to their local local representation to show them the fight. Is she doing enough?
Right. And so when we were together the other night and I said, you know, the second hardest job is mayor of New York City. The hardest job is the presidency. But LBJ was very clear that the hardest job in America is being a mayor of a major city. She's in a very difficult position because there's descriptive representation. She is a black woman as an executive. So we know already Donald Trump just sees red and it makes him very angry whenever he sees leadership that is not white and male because he does not believe in diversity, equity, or inclusion. He said that. The second part is because of the structure of Washington, D.C. and home rule, it was put in place in 1973, and there's this kind of shared structure. They don't have senators that they can rely on. They don't have a governor that they can call on. There is this relationship with the federal government. She's in a very difficult position because they are essentially in the same home in some ways. I think some D.C. residents want a lot more than a tweet that says this is un-American. Some D.C. residents recognize, well, what is she to do? There is no one essentially higher than her. You know, Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's the representative in Congress, doesn't even have a vote. So I think it's a position that is incredibly difficult. Descriptively as a black woman, substantively as a Democrat, dealing with a Republican president who is very clear that he wants sort of Washington, D.C. And we know that crime is a proxy for African Americans. We know that Washington, D.C. is a majority black city. And so he can sort of say all this coded, not coded language when he's talking about cleaning up the streets. And I think everyone in D.C. knows what that is. And so, you know, thinking about growing up as a black person in young cities, a lot of black communities are both under-policed and over-policed simultaneously. And so they do want to have safe streets. Absolutely. It's a major city. It's not devoid of crime. But they don't want hyper-over-policing where they're afraid to actually walk down the street. And when you've got 750 new people who come in who don't know Washington, D.C., they don't know the culture of Washington, D.C., they don't even know the streets of Washington, D.C., that puts a lot of families much more on edge because they wonder what their children are going to feel.
Always an important conversation, particularly when you're highlighting the differences and nuances of how race, gender, and everything else, individual culture, plays into everything that's unfolding, not only in D.C., but potentially in cities that are also being targeted by Donald Trump in this way. Dr. Christina Greer, thank you for being with us.